April is traditionally when we celebrate Lucianna Gladney Ross. Her birthday is March 21st, and later on Jefferson County named a date in April as Lucianna Ross Day. So each year we try to take this meeting and remember all the great things that she did for this town, Kimmswick. For those of you that are guests, or those of you that are new members, you might not realize who Lucianna Gladney Ross is. You'll look around the town and you'll see different plaques and buildings with her name on it. Mrs. Ross is responsible for a lot, which you'll learn more even later this evening. She is an heiress to the 7-Up fortune. She was a driving force behind the preservation of Kimmswick. In the early 1970s, Kimmswick was in disrepair, a nice word for it. She had the idea and the fortitude to buy up many of the historic properties, and with restoration, renovation, and repurposing, we have some quaint shops in town and many improvements. She brought the old log buildings. They were dismantled and brought to Kimmswick in order to preserve and promote their history, which is our theme to the Historical Society, is to promote and preserve the history of Kimmswick. So that's what we try to do with these meetings and passing the word on, and it's nice to have some new faces in the audience tonight. With all this being said, her history is carried on through the works of the people that are here now. And this evening, I have the pleasure, I'm going to help you stand up and come up, of introducing Ginnie Terry. Ginnie Terry has been a member for, I can't count how many years. A long time.
78.
She's going to tell us since 78. And she's going to tell us about how Kimmswick has been affected her life and how her life is affected by Kimmswick. Let's get you up here.
Yeah.
Steve's got
You want some help, Steve? Let me bring the chair up.
All right, Mom, let's go.
Yeah. Comes back. Help me get my foot up.
I'm pulling the
My
apron.
foot. My foot.
Please get a little higher.
Okay, there we go. That's a big step.
Thank you.
All right. Progress.
Okay, sit down.
Yep. I'm going to hold the chair while you do it.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
You are on. May I present Ginnie Terry? Let's give her a round of applause.
I am 96, so I didn't need a little help. I guess I'll begin with myself. I was born in 1928 in Scranton, Arkansas. My name is Ginnie Terry. Now I go, but I was given Virginia Neumeyer, very German. Mother's family came from Berlin, and my dad came from Bavaria. And we had a lot of singing in our household whenever the family would gather. I have 3 younger brothers, 2 have passed. I'm the oldest, the only girl. Anyway, this town that I was born in is like about 15 to 18 miles it was then a dirt road when I was born, off the main road. And, but the town had a tiny, very tiny, about the size of a bathroom, a pharmacy, a post office, all those little tiny buildings, a church, and of course, gas station had 1 pump, in case there was a motor vehicle. Anyway, we were near the Arkansas River where I was born, and everything flooded. My family, my mom and dad's home farm, everything. The land was, the river changed its channel, so the land was gone too. So we ended up moving to Missouri. And I won't even go into all the details about that, but I'll go ahead and explain what we got. After we were married, we were blessed with these wonderful 2 sons and 3 daughters, and some of them are here this evening. Not all of them can make it. Probably being a parent was the most wonderful thing of my life. But I did have some adventures later on with Girl Scouts. My oldest daughter joined Brownie Girl Scouts in 1957. And that's where everything started with my adventures, I guess you'd say, because we did all the usual things with the troops and everything, and along the way I met Darlene Spink. Some of you might know Darlene. And we started doing some adventures. We would come down here to, just for a drive to Kimmswick. I had no idea what I was looking at or anything, but she would never explain what was going on. I just ride along with her. We would stop at the park sometime. And but I always went to Brookwood Day Camp at Brookwood Farms with Hazel Lee owned the property. Her and her husband lived there and owned the property. And we named our day camp for Girl Scouts, Brookwood. And this was like a whole week-long camp. And it was a wonderful place. It has this little stream that runs like through Macedon picnic area, the same stream of water. And it was a perfect, wonderful place. And Hazel is a wonderful artist. And she has a book here that you could buy somewhere in town of all her paintings.
We have it here.
It's in the museum.
Right here, okay. And but she had so many friends. She was such a wonderful, friendly, wonderful person. And so she introduced me to Dorothy Hines. And so Dorothy knew me then as a Girl Scouter. And so Dorothy was extremely interested in trying to get Mastodon Park and museum. It was just land out there, a big farm and land along the outer road. And Dorothy decided to ask me if I would have a big event of some for Girl Scouts. And I decided, got permission and with the Girl Scouts, and I had a district event which was over 100 people, well over 100 people that said they would come, and we were going to dress in costume.
Period. Yeah. Period dress.
Yeah, period dress. And anyway, Dorothy was magic. She actually had Hillsborough come and put a temporary bridge from the outer road right into this land. It's called the Borrow Pit. It was called the Borrow Pit because the dirt had been used to make Highway 55, and so it was very level and quite large area off of the outer road. And and that way we could drive the parents and the leaders could drive the girls in, and I had to have Johnny on the spot deliver too. And so anyway, I also found out I met Viva Edney, and she used to deliver mail here in Kimmswick. And let's see, who else? Anyway, I was getting all these friends, and it was getting to be a lot of fun. And so I found out that Dorothy's daughter Shirley lived here at what I call the Ziegler House. And her daughter, is her daughter here tonight?
No.
Okay.
Noel's not here.
Noel?
the granddaughter.
Noel, yeah.
That's Shirley's daughter. Yeah.
Well, anyway, they participated, they were not Girl Scouts, but they did participate in some of our activities. We had very primitive activities. We made rope and all kinds of other crafts that you would have had in those days. And anyway, on Sunday, when we closed camp, we had for Viva Edney to have a Crocs of cool drink. It was really orange from McDonald's, but I didn't tell him. I had it all in front of the Burgess House in the front yard. And Viva was dressed in costume, and she was going to, as we walked, we were going to walk into town. And as we walked into town, she would dip this cool drink and say, "Would you like a cool drink?" And so on. I'll go back, I'm going to go back now before the walk. We walked, first of all, Dorothy had the traffic stopped, the outer road and the main, so we could get into Kimmswick. And she also had her granddaughter, Noelle, had a horse. And I think Noelle had a friend that had a horse. So we had several horses in our walk too, that walked. So we walked from the outer road into Kimmswick, up to the Burgess House, and got our cool drink. And then we had arranged, Hazel surprised me. She had almost a block long of her artwork with easels. And guess who else was there displaying some art? It was Lucianne. And I really didn't formally meet her, but there she was helping out with my Girl Scout event, really. And so then the plan was that we were also to walk down the street to the Ziegler House, all these hundreds of people. And Dorothy was making homemade butter, that was the plan, and serving it on little pieces of biscuit, free, just giving it out to anybody that came by. And so that was that event. And
76?
yeah, it was about 1973, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So then in 1976, early, maybe it could have even been the edge of 1975, I was approached by Dorothy that there was some plans made with a lady named Eleanor Coyle. Eleanor Coyle was going to be in charge of the whole big event for the town. And I was introduced to Eleanor. Yeah, there's her picture. Glee was good enough to...
You can pass it around.
Yeah, that lady.
Eleanor Coyle, Betty Eldridge, and Lucianne and I met. We met in the Burgess House. There used to be a table in there. It was way too fancy for the building, but we did use it that day. It had 2 benches, and we talked. Really, Betty and Eleanor explained what they wanted. They had these, 5 other houses, buildings, that they need people to take care of, for tourists.
Tourists.
Yeah. And so would I be able to get Girl Scouts? And so I got, again, almost some of the same Girl Scouts, because they had some of their outfits from walking from the, what later was Macedon Park. And anyway, we spent the whole day, the four of us together. And that's where I learned a lot about Lucianne. She finally, started talking to me because she had to be, I think she had to be a little cautious about who she met. People had she was very generous, and maybe people had taken advantage of her at times. And anyway, so we had a wonderful day, and what they did was they took me in all the houses, and they described everything about the house, and there was a write-up, and even, I guess Betty, who was, I think, Lucianne's secretary and companion, is that right?
Yeah.
Had typed up these forms, and anyway, they were in each one of these buildings. And anyway, so we spent the whole day talking, going to each building, and Lucianne would explain things about the house.
Did you know at the time that Lucianna owned all those houses? And did you know at the time
I
that
did.
she was bringing Eleanor there because Eleanor was an expert on
Yeah.
architecture and even history, and was going to be in charge of having this all on display for a bicentennial celebration? And you knew that Lucianna owned these buildings?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I didn't know why they were empty though, because it was all new to me. But anyway, we did have the event. One of the things, as we ended the day, then going through all the buildings, we went back to the Burgess house and sat down, and Lucianne, she was hoping that, she said she knew that the volunteers would take good care of all the buildings in the Burgess house. And, but she was hoping that we could continue our work and to keep everything in good taste, and to remember that the Burgess house, when it was first built, and to kind of keep that in mind of those days, which was 1840, I believe.
Yeah,
1840, 50?
Yeah.
the original one was 1840.
And so we had that event, but later on I continued doing Girl Scouting and day camp out at Brookwood with Hazel Lee. And one day everything was very quiet out there, and I was working with my unit, and it was close to the stream, and all the little young girls were in the distance. And I was walking over to my car to get something, and I saw Lucianne sitting in the stream with her lawn chair, doing her art with her easel, so peaceful. The water was rippling. It was the most beautiful scene and she was all to herself and quiet, had the little floppy hat on. And she stayed there for a long time because I snuck over there. I never said anything. I didn't want to disturb her. Anyway, I enjoyed seeing that. So that's about, and then I continued with Girl Scouts, and I'm still a Girl Scout. So.
I was a Girl Scout. And when did you sort of become the person who was in charge of the Burgess? Because I remember you in the Burgess years and years for Christmas.
Yes, I did. Well, first of all, I volunteered for Christmas at the Wenham Drake 1 year, 2 years at, 1 year at the Yellow House, 2 years at the Barbagal. 1 year I worked actually, when you were there, you displayed all those wonderful things from one of your trips. Remember the Barbagal? Yeah.
Scotland?
And anyway, then I started helping Sylvia at the, yes. And so then Sylvia said one time, I don't know if it was 1 year or two, I think it was maybe one, would you take our place? Because, we were doing house people, house chairman then. And I said, sure. And from then on, I had some more adventures. Darlene and I. Darlene liked to do the greens. I did the cleaning and the theme. And she brought the tree in and did all some pretty greens everywhere. We were just as happy as we could be. And
And you still got volunteers. And you still got volunteers to help you there.
oh yes, absolutely. I have pictures in a book with me, and Glee brought a book that explains a few things about Eleanor Coyle too.
Yes, Eleanor Coyle wrote 3 different books. This is her first one. And Eleanor knew a lot. She was a very educated woman, and she's buried at Bellefontaine, as our guide pronounced it. She's buried at Bellefontaine Cemetery. So in the book, there's another piece of paper in there showing her gravesite in the cemetery, and also more details about her. But also in her first book, she's talking a lot about architecture. And in there is a page, number 30, the Barbagallo House. And she doesn't really go into explanations that this is an example of old French architecture, but because she was showing St. Louis houses with French architecture, you have to say, yes, that's what it is. She wrote 2 more different books, and of course her husband was the publisher. I think it was Folkestone Press. But anyway, this lady had a lot of knowledge, and the longer you study things about Lucianna, you learn that this lady knew lots of people in high places. When she wanted to get something done, she got to the people who knew how to do it. And she always worked, as you have hinted to, not aggressively, not boisterously. And I think some of you who are members for years and years hardly ever saw her, hardly ever knew her. But she was wealthy, and she could do these things, and she wanted to do it, and she was kind-hearted, but she didn't want to be taken advantage of. So she was always a wee bit leery. So,
And one of the things that happened at that 1976 event, I believe, I don't know if anybody was there. Was anybody there?
right.
I was 8, but I was there.
They had a greased pig contest.
Yeah.
Did you get
It was next
involved
to
with
City
that?
Hall, if I recall correctly. Right? Yeah. I was selling root beer. I
Yeah,
didn't get to go grease a pig and chase it.
yeah.
But that was your the
fake dates.
bicentennial picnic for,
And then I was very busy running for 6 buildings to make sure the girls were okay, the Girl Scouts, and they were all in costume. And they were doing a beautiful job. And so Cindy, who came to the house?
Betsy Ross, or not Betsy Ross, Betsy Bruce.
Yeah, Betsy Bruce.
Last names make sense. Betsy Bruce.
Betsy Bruce.
Oh, from Channel 4.
Yep.
And someone else, when I went up there in the Ziegler house upstairs to check on the girls, Marlon Perkins. Oh. The famous zoologist.
And I know that Senator Jack Danforth was in town quite often.
Mm-hmm.
Remember him on pictures that we have? Yes.
Yeah, when Betsy Bruce came through, my friend, we were doing the tours upstairs.
you're gonna talk about her.
Oh,
Yes.
Talk about it, just go ahead.
I was just saying, whenever Betsy Bruce came through, my friend, that was also a Girl Scout, we were doing the tours. Whenever she came through, as soon as she went back down the steps, we're like, that was Betsy Bruce. We might be on TV. We weren't, but that's right.
And speaking of steps, has anybody been in the Ziegler house? It
Oh, yes, oh, yes.
has a very narrow stairway,
Oh, my
right?
I remember
The
Noelle
stairs are like-
yelling down the stairs, wait, there's too many people up here, and then she would let some people go down, and then more people would come up.
That's right.
You'd almost have to walk up those stairs sideways for your foot to even get on a step.
Yeah.
And it's still that way from what I can tell.
You know, you mentioned that Lucianna owned a lot of buildings in Kimmswick. Should we not mention that her family had a summer home here? And she had fond memories of spending time here. And as she grew older, one day she came through town and it was kind of sad. It was many buildings were abandoned, they'd been vandalized, and it broke her heart. And then they said that she started buying up property and renovating it all. And that's how it happened to save Kimmswick.
And as soon as we have listened to everything, and I know we're not gonna hear everything, but Diane would like to follow up on that story about the different properties that Lucianna owned.
Does anybody have any questions for Jenny? I will say that whenever I can remember coming to doing the Christmas programs, which we had, I think we had 7 or 8 houses at one time that we would decorate for Christmas, but the log cabins are where our heart still is, because that's the one we still open at the log cabins now. But I can always remember the Girl Scouts being in there working with you, and one lady in particular, her name is Chris, and anybody that's gone through, she just loved to work there, and after Jenny had retired, she would still come back and say, can I come in and dress up for the day? And she would.
That was Chris
sit
Fallon.
at
Chris
the,
Fallon. Yeah, she lives in Barnhart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was a real sweetheart, but we still have, and I know Nadine can attest to, we have people that come in and say, I was one of the Girl Scouts when Miss Terry was here.
Well, I have pictures of album I'll have downstairs. These, all my ladies that came with me, my family, they're in the book. But they did tours. My son over here, Paul, I don't know if you remember, you know, when I was a child, if I'd enter a household, it was quiet. There was no radio, no television, or nothing. It was quiet, but there was something I would hear. I would hear a clock. Tick tock, tick tock. So I had you to record the ticking of a clock. And I took the clock that's in the Burgess Howe and put it up on jam cupboard where you would enter the door for the tour, candlelight tour. And we had that loud ticking going on behind the clock. The clock didn't even run. And it was perfect. Do you remember that? Yeah. So I had my whole family working for me.
And grandkids.
And a granddaughter, yes, daughters.
Yeah.
Yes, we have pictures. Thank you.
Do you want to come back to
Yeah.
your seat?
If there are no questions for Jenny, I'll just go on with the next little story here.
I need someone to
Because-
hold the chair.
I got the chair.
What has happened just recently, like today,
Now I'm gonna step down.
Diane Mace
Yeah.
said, I have a little extra time, I'm going to Hillsborough. Can I look up something? I said, yes. Could you go to the Court of Deeds office and could you find out the year in which Franklin Young Gladney bought the land that is now called Sunnyside? I was told by a dear friend of mine who I've known since childhood and is loaded with information that that property was bought in 1919. I said, so could you look that up? And could you also maybe then look up when Lucianna Ross, his daughter, bought her first house in Kimmswick? And she said, well, you know, things take longer than they usually do. I said, good luck. I sent her an emoji with crossed fingers, clapped hands, thumbs up. And she was on her way. So she has a report to give you on Lucianna's holdings in Kimmswick.
So today I did look up, and what I found was that they bought Sunnyside in 1918. So he bought it from Spencer, a man by the name of Spencer. So, but that's not, previous to that, I had gone to, where's this one piece of paper? I think, here. So, we were trying to decide how much property Lucianna really owned in Kimmswick. So I found one deed where she transferred all the property that today I found she bought the first property that I could find in Kimmswick in 1971. That's the first one that I could find. And in 1986, she transferred all the properties that she had, I guess, accumulated from 71 to 1986. When they transferred, like they must have set up their company, and
The name of the company was?
Telejohn, for her 3 children, Helen, Lucianna, and John. So I'm assuming that's what it stood for, but that's what I gathered. So there was one deed that they did that was 30, 31 or 33, let me look. 31 parcels that it talks about in this one deed that she transferred to the corporation. So I went through and I color coded like there's like 3 parcels that I think must belong down here, and I didn't know exactly because all of these were really specific, lot 1, whatever. So all the different colors are the different parcels that Lucianna owned when she transferred them to the corporation. So she owned a rather large amount of property.
Yes.
Now today when I was starting to look, there was a man by the name of, maybe you know this name, Rayburn. Do you know that name?
That's Herbie's dad, my friend growing up. They lived in
His name
Kirkland.
was Herbie. The man's name was Herbert or something, I thought there was. Okay.
His son was Herbie, who was lived in the Kirk house.
Oh, is that, okay. So the first 3 parcels that I could find that she bought in Kimmswick were all from that man, was from Mr. Rayburn or whatever. So that's so I don't know, we'll pass this around, everybody can kind of see, because it's kind of amazing to me, she owned 3/4 of a block or half of the block, and they, like I said, 33 different parcels that they went through to do that. So that's right. Yes, ma'am.
We were always told that she owned everything on Market Street except for Lee's house, the Wagner house. Is that what you found or close thereof?
There's 2 there, and
We have another paper in here that somebody gave us that listed, and I think it was one of the Seltzers.
and I have not gone, I haven't done every piece of property. This only shows what was on this one deed that she transferred, as of the properties that she'd been buying. So I'm not saying that's everything she ever owned, so.
She used to pay me to mow them, so I used to mow everything except for 2 houses on Market Street.
There we go, Brian's got
So, I mean,
the skinny.
that's from my memory. Because I did it on Mondays when everything was closed.
There you go,
Yeah.
there you go. So we can pass it around. Do you want to see? Or you want to pass it around? Okay.
The checks were now he's John.
Didn't they tell her if she bought one more property that she'd own the place and they would cease to be a town? It would just be
That
her.
was probably the city talking, but she didn't own the Reno's junkyard. She didn't own that, I don't think ever. No, that's house number 2 on Market Street.
We wish sometimes she did. A lot of times we wish she did.
But I'm going to take over and talk about Renee Himmler, another lady who helped carry out Lucianna's ideas. And of course, I've got a picture of Loretta, We kind of meet once a year, kind of close to her birthday. And she really, at the age of 97, would rather not go around and do too much exploring unless we can just sort of sit in the car and drive and see things. I mean, she's amazed. I live on River Street, which is just outside of Kimmswick, and now there are 5 stoplights between me and the Imperial Post Office. I say these things to Loretta, and she just stares at me like, you know, where are you? Okay, so here's a picture of Loretta. And of course, we went to the port, Kimmswick Port. She wanted to see that. And then she wanted to come and see what we've done to the museum. Whoop, upside down. So you'll notice on this picture, Nadine's on it, Diane's on it, I'm taking the picture, and Loretta is using her cane and pointing out things back there in that wonderful quilt we made for the mayor, Bernie Wilkham. But I think I'm here to speak for Loretta. Loretta had a tooth extracted last week, and she just is kind of, you know, being careful with it and just couldn't make it. But we've been talking a lot. And you already know, as our president pointed out, that Lucianna came from a wealthy family. Her father was a co-founder of the 7-Up Company. He was the lawyer. There was a financier, and there was a man who had the recipe. So the 3 of them worked it out, and the wealth came from the 7-Up Company. Her father, Frank Gladney, bought Sunnyside. And my friend from childhood, Marilyn here. Marilyn lived there on Sunnyside as a farmer caretaker for 43 years. And she started to tell me all these wonderful stories about the cows and the pigs and the horses, which the girls rode, and the cheese and the butter, and all, you know, on it goes. Well, tonight I'm talking about Loretta, but we have to hear lots more from Marilyn at a later date. According to Loretta, okay, and I'm going to read a lot because there are quotes from her. According to Loretta, the story of the museum starts with Sugar Kramer. Now we get back to Sugar. We ought to have a picture of Sugar Kramer. I don't know if our members even remember her. The wife of Wayne Bryan does, yes. Okay. She was one of our early presidents, co-owner of a restaurant with your mom, Georgia. Lived, I would say, almost in town. They owned Kramer Hauling, which today is owned by Waste Management. Okay, so she was important in town. She would have known Lucianna. She was the one who said early on when our society was formed, 1977, after the bicentennial, she's the one who said to her husband, what do we do to make money? We can't have a society that don't make any money. And he said, cook apple butter. So we credit her with that. Now, we were organized. Lucianna's lawyers drew up the bylaws, 1977. 1978, we were already paying taxes as a not-for-profit organization, but we were selling apple butter. And where were we meeting? Members, where were we meeting? Only thing I can think of is the annex.
Where's the annex?
Where's the annex? You know where the annex is? Well, it faces Market Street, and it's the back part of what is today called Kimmswick Kitchen and Bath. Yes, a little low thing. Yes. We met in there, people. Then slowly folks started giving us things, and we put up some display cases, and the room got more and more crowded, and more and more crowded. Now, when we have every deed about on the day Lucianna bought every piece of property, I don't know when she bought the property where this church sits. But it was Sugar, according to Loretta, who asked her if the Historical Society could meet here. Now, which way did it go? Did she ask and Lucianna bought, or did Lucianna buy and we met? But anyway, so now we're meeting in the church, which we call the Kimmswick Hall. Okay, that went on for a while. People continued to give us things. Where do you put our displays of things we have? We don't have enough room. We need another space. It was Sugar who asked Loretta, who asked Sugar, who asked Lucianna, can we have the property next door where a mobile home sat, where the parsonage for the church and the minister had lived before the church congregation ceased to meet. And it was because of that asking, and Lucianna gave us the adjoining lot. We had to get rid of the mobile home. So we came here by deed, 1993. We got the lot next door, 1995. And I think Sugar had a lot of influence on Lucianna because she was a town lady, like Georgia Crow, who was a co-restaurant owner with Sugar, and Georgia probably knew her well, Brian's mom. Also, Viva Edney was mentioned. Pat Reno was here. So now we're set. We have an empty lot next door. We have this building. So we need a museum to put our stuff in. Here comes Loretta to the rescue. Loretta had a son, Dale, and he had a friend who was an architect. And he made this architect come and draw up plans for us. I'm going to quote Loretta a lot. She says, that architect went crazy, and we didn't have that much money. Now Loretta would say that, because at the time Loretta was the treasurer of this historical society. She was in charge of books. So a committee was formed, and we hired Joe Wallach. He had a construction company in Eureka. His wife was also a shop owner, an antique shops. And quoting Loretta, she says, we had the dollars to do what he proposed. But I put the screws on a lot of things too expensive. So now, Loretta and Floyd, her husband, Floyd Gimler, started visiting local museums on the weekends. How did they do things? They were over at Mastodon Park, where Three Rivers had an exhibit one fall, and there was this big picture of Monsanto Park, and they weren't going to use it anymore after the exhibit, so Loretta brought it here. And it's still in our museum. Have you seen it? The big picture of Monsanto Park with the relics below that the man found with the metal detector. Okay, so she got things. Then she and Floyd sat down with all the information that Betty Eldridge, the secretary companion of Lucianna, had gathered, and she read the materials, and they, the couple, made all the little things that you see in the museum. What do you call that board? Chalkboard, what do you call that? Foam board? Foam board. Whatever, yes. I said, anybody help you with that? Anybody remember helping?
Are you kidding? Loretta wouldn't let you. She was her job. She was doing it.
Okay. She didn't say anybody helped. So she and Floyd did all that work. Okay. Now, Loretta says, quote, Lucianna never showed up during the construction. So Loretta phoned her to arrange a private tour of the church and the new museum. And on a Saturday morning, they met, and Lucianna was shown by Loretta everything. The buildings, the basements, everything. And, says Loretta, Lucianna sat down on a bench by the museum door as she was leaving and said to Loretta, can you believe that we have a museum in Kimmswick? Loretta knew she was floored. And Loretta replied, the museum would not be here if you had not given us this land. And we ask for no money. We did it with apple butter money. And so it was her and Floyd's work in the museum. And of course, you know, the treasurer was in charge. So Loretta now lives, she's 97 years old, at Laclede Groves, Senior Living in Webster Groves. Okay, that's Loretta's big involvement with the museum. Since that time, there's another story here. This is where my friend Marilyn comes into it. Marilyn knows most everything about the Gladney families, the Ross family, the Wells family. Because she lived on the property, her husband was the caretaker, her family, her 6 children, for 43 years. We've only had about six hours of talking. We have lots more to go. But I start asking her questions. And I say to her, okay, this is the recipe for the punch that was used every year for our candlelight tour. Diane Nace found this cardboard one day in what I call the kettle closet downstairs. And I said, give that to me, that's just gonna get thrown away someday. No, we have to have that, we should probably frame this. So I said, where's this? Who knows this? I asked my friend Marilyn. She said, I think that came from the St. Luke's Church cookbook. Where's that church cookbook? I don't know, it's here. Anyway, and she knows the lady whose recipe it was, Leona Rising. Now I go to this thing, I did go to the same church years and years ago. I know all these people in the book that she's talking about. So we have started thinking about how often we have to get together. Here's the book. The only thing that's different is that whoever enlarged the recipe, maybe it was you, Marilyn, because the ingredients are larger than this recipe, and 3 cans of best cola are added.
Yes, Ginny has a picture of the punch here that I'm going to pass around so you can see how big the punch is.
And also, I asked at the very beginning, was Loretta who always served the punch? Not at the beginning, not at the very beginning. It was Marilyn in the kitchen making the recipe, and the Barbagallo ladies, Betty Barbagallo, serving. So that changed a little later on. So we're having the punch today. I hope Diane has made it. And we'll have to talk
But
more.
I didn't get Best because I didn't have any. And then I said, I should have got 7-Up.
Yeah.
For Lucianna, but I didn't do that until after, because I didn't think about that till I got home.
I think I used a lot of similar.
Could I talk about the cookies? That
Well,
went-
yes,
that
that's
was
another
served.
story. So I'm going to let Marilyn in peace for today because we're going to have numerous programs about everything Marilyn knows. I mean, she knows little things like the artistry of Lucianna. We never saw Lucianna paint. But Marilyn has. Ginny. So there's lots more we need to know. Her sister, Catherine, very much into music, and her brother Graves into architecture and art. So she knows, but we don't have it all yet. Only 6 hours into this. We've got about many more days to go. So,
And I'm still looking for material. I have books.
Can I talk about the cookies? How
Yes.
Well, part of the ticket that we would sell
For the
for the
Christmas
candlelight tour was offering also a couple of cookies and a drink, such as coffee or punch, your punch. And so, but we just couldn't keep up with
we were all volunteers.
and cookies. We just couldn't keep up with them. So Loretta planned to make cookies at her house. And so it was me, Darlene, Hildy, and Loretta at her house. And we would start at 7 in the morning, work all day, we wouldn't talk except at lunch a little bit, little bit. And, but anyway, we had it so, she had a beautiful large kitchen with double ovens. And we made
probably 1,000. Because
And
we
you
worked
told
for,
me, as we talked one time, that everybody had their own job.
yes, my job, okay. Darlene did the mix, and she had this big area where she was working with the mix. And she would then take the bowl and put it over on my counter. And I was doing I call it making the nubbies. I shaped all the cookies. Some sliced, some by hand, some by spoon, whatever. And then Loretta would grab my big sheet and put it in the oven. And so and then Hildy would scrape them off when they were hot and cool them. And so we would do this all day long. We were maybe humming to ourselves, but we wouldn't talk at all. And the place smelled wonderful. And then about 4 p.m., I'm sorry, it was time to quit. And Floyd would come in, her husband, and he would say, "Any broken ones?" Of course, we always had a few for him. Yes. And so it was fun. Yeah.
And Loretta added to me in a conversation one time as we were discussing these cookies, Loretta added that one year Eva Kirkpatrick came. And Eva Kirkpatrick was another dynamo in our community. Wonderful science teacher, I mean, just wonderful. But she said, but Eva really didn't do much. I think she just came to see how we did it. Yes, but the two ladies, Ginnie Terry and Loretta Dillman, were here to celebrate tonight and their accomplishments for the society. And it's almost 50 years old, this society, so we're aging.
2 years to our anniversary.
Ginny, and one more thing, Ginny likes to kid and say that she'll never catch up in age to Loretta. Because Loretta is born in September,
And I am too. So.
but after her date.
No,
A year later.
Well, she's on the 7th, I think, of September.
1997, yeah. I'm 96.
96, so she turns 1 year older and then you catch up to her, but you never pass. So